In the eyes of my girlfriend, Bella, I was a man who lived in the mud. For 2 years, our relationship followed a predictable rhythm. I would pick her up from her high-rise marketing office in my battered, earth-stained pickup truck, and she would immediately roll down the windows, claiming the smell of fertilizer was clinging to her silk blouse. She saw my life as a series of small, insignificant transactions. Me standing in front of a ring light in my backyard, holding up rare monstera cuttings and philodendrons for an audience of online collectors. "It's a cute hobby, Silas," she would say, her voice laced with that sugary, condescending kindness she used for children and the elderly. "But don't you ever want to be someone who wears a suit? Someone who doesn't have dirt permanently etched into his cuticles?" I would just smile, my hands stained with the dark, rich loam of my latest potting mix. "I like the dirt, Bella. It's honest. You plant something, you nurture it, and it grows. There are no lies in the soil." I didn't tell her that the hobby she mocked was actually a specialized branch of a multi-million-dollar botanical empire. I didn't tell her that the backyard live streams were just a way for me to stay connected to the community of hobbyists I loved. And I certainly didn't tell her that Viridian Prime, the most exclusive rare plant nursery in the country, the one that provided the living walls for the very office she worked in, was entirely mine. I wanted to see if she loved the man or the balance in the man's bank account. I got my answer slowly, like the onset of root rot. The shifts were subtle at first. Bella began working late more often. She stopped visiting my nursery, claiming the humidity made her hair frizz. When we did spend time together, she was constantly on her phone, her eyes lighting up at notifications in a way they never did when I spoke. One night, we were at a small bistro. I had spent 14 hours that day hand-pollinating a batch of variegated alocasia, a project worth more than her annual salary, and I was exhausted. "My boss, Marcus, took the team out to the Gilded Lily last night," she said, swirling her wine and looking at my calloused hands with a flicker of revulsion. "He's incredible, Silas. He's 32, he drives a Porsche, and he just closed a $10 million deal. He talks about market disruption and global scalability. It's intoxicating to be around that kind of ambition." "I'm ambitious, Bella," I said quietly. She let out a short, sharp laugh. "Silas, you sell leaves to strangers on the internet. That's not ambition, that's a stall at a flea market. Marcus is a titan. He deserves someone who can walk the red carpet with him, not someone who needs a shower the moment they get home." I felt the first crack in my heart then. It wasn't just the insult to my work, it was the realization that she had been comparing me to a titan she barely knew, and I was losing the battle. A few days later, I was at a local nursery supply store. Not one of mine, just a small shop where I could buy bulk stakes. I saw Sarah, Bella's best friend, in the aisle. She didn't see me. She was on speakerphone with Bella. "Girl, I don't know how you do it. The smell of mulch alone would kill me. Are you still with the plant boy?" "Don't remind me," Bella's voice came through, cold and mocking. "He's sweet, but he's a dead end. I feel like I'm dating a gardener. I'm just waiting for Marcus to make the official move. He hinted at a private consultation this weekend at his penthouse. Once that's locked in, I'm done with Silas and his little greenhouse. I deserve a life that's polished, not one that needs weeding." I stood frozen, a bag of perlite in my hands. The nice and kind Bella was a mask. The real Bella saw me as a placeholder, a safety net until a CEO type came along to lift me into the sky. That Saturday, I went to the Viridian Prime flagship store. It was a glass cathedral of greenery located in the high-end district, catering to the city's elite. I was there to check on a shipment of Spiritus Sanctus, plants so rare they required armed transport. As I walked out of the loading bay, still in my work clothes, I looked across the street toward a luxury hotel. A silver Porsche pulled up to the curb, the door opened, and a man in a perfectly tailored Italian suit stepped out. It was Marcus, And clinging to his arm, looking at him with a gaze of pure, hungry adoration, was Bella. She was wearing a dress I'd bought her for her birthday, a dress she told me was too fancy for our dates. She looked radiant, polished, and completely oblivious to the fact that the man she was with was currently 3 months behind on his lease payments for the office space my holding company owned. I stood there, the dirt of the nursery still under my fingernails, and I didn't feel sadness. I felt the cold, quiet click of a gardener who realized he was wasting his water on a plastic flower. I pulled out my phone and dialed my head of legal. "This is Silas," I said, my voice as steady as a mountain. "I want a full audit of the Sterling Marketing Group's contracts with Viridian Prime and call the building manager at the Spire. I think it's time we reevaluate Marcus Sterling's scalability. It's time for a harvest." For the next 2 weeks, I played the part of the oblivious boyfriend. I watched Bella pull further away, her excuses becoming lazier, her insults becoming more direct. She started forgetting our anniversaries, and when I brought her flowers, rare, hand-reared orchids that collectors would kill for, she would leave them on the counter to wilt without even putting them in water. "They're just plants, Silas," she sighed one evening. "They don't match the decor of my new apartment anyway." "New apartment?" I asked. She bit her lip, realizing she'd slipped. I'm looking. I need a place that reflects my new trajectory. You wouldn't understand." I understood perfectly. Marcus had promised her a seat in his penthouse. What she didn't know was that Marcus's Titan status was a house of cards. His marketing firm was struggling, and his biggest client, the one that kept his lights on, was a luxury resort chain that was about to sign a massive contract with Viridian Prime for their global landscaping. I arranged a grand opening gala for Viridian's new botanical garden. It was the event of the season. Every CEO, socialite, and power player in the city was invited. I knew Bella would be there. Marcus would never miss an opportunity to network with the elite. I arrived early, but I didn't go to the red carpet. I stayed in the back, in the owner's suite, watching the security feeds. I saw the Porsche arrive. I saw Bella step out, looking like a queen in a diamond necklace that I suspected Marcus had bought with company credit. She walked into the gala, her head held high, looking down her nose at the staff who were arranging the displays. She had no idea that these staff were people I had trained, people who knew exactly who I was. I waited until the middle of the night when Marcus was surrounded by potential investors bragging about his firm's organic growth. I walked onto the floor. I wasn't wearing my dirty work clothes. I was wearing a bespoke suit of dark forest green, my hair slicked back, the dirt finally scrubbed from my skin. Bella saw me first. Her eyes went wide, then narrow with rage. She marched over to me, Marcus trailing behind her like a loyal dog. "Silas, what the hell are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice a low venom. "This is a private event for the elite. You can't just sneak in because you sell plants online. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for me? Leave before I call security." Marcus smirked, adjusting his cuffs. "Is this the gardener you told me about, Bella? Listen, buddy, I know you probably have a crush on her, but you're punching way above your weight class. Why don't you go back to your backyard and play with your weeds?" I didn't look at Marcus. I looked at Bella. "You told me I deserved a life that was polished, Bella. You told your friends I was a dead end. Was the Porsche worth the lie?" Bella's face turned a deep crimson. "I don't owe you anything. You're a small man with a small life. Marcus is a visionary. He's the one who's going to take me to the top." "Actually," a voice boomed from behind me, it was the president of the National Botanical Board. Marcus, I just received word that your firm's contract with the resort chain has been terminated. Something about a conflict of interest with the primary stakeholder. Marcus turned pale. What? Who is the stakeholder? The president gestured to me. I believe you've met Silas Thorne. He is the founder of Viridian Prime, the owner of this facility, and as of this morning, the owner of the debt on your marketing firm's office building. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched the Titan crumble. I watched the CEO type lose his breath, and then I watched Bella. The air in the Viridian Botanical Gala was thick, not with the humidity of my backyard greenhouse, but with the scent of jasmine, expensive champagne, and the suffocating musk of old money. As I stood there in my dark forest green suit, the president of the Botanical Board's words still hung in the air like a guillotine blade. I believe you've met Silas Thorne, the founder of Viridian Prime, the owner of this facility, and as of this morning, the owner of the debt on your marketing firm's office building. Marcus's face didn't just turn pale, it turned a sickly, translucent gray. The champagne glass in his hand trembled so violently that the liquid sloshed over his polished cuffs. He looked at me, then at the president, then back to me. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out, just a dry, pathetic clicking of his throat. Bella, however, was the first to find her voice. It wasn't a voice of apology, it was a voice of frantic, desperate recalculation. "Silas," she breathed, taking a step towards me, her hand reaching out as if to touch the fabric of a suit she now realized cost more than her car. "You own all of this?" she breathed, taking a step towards me, her hand reaching out as if to touch the fabric of a suit she now realized cost more than her car. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me think you were just selling plants on the internet?" "I didn't let you think anything, Bella. I told you I was ambitious. I told you I loved the dirt because it was honest. You were the one who decided that honesty meant poverty. You were the one who decided that because my hands were dirty, my life was small." Marcus finally found his breath, though it was ragged. "This has to be a mistake, a conflict of interest. You can't just pull a multi-million-dollar contract because of a girl." I turned my gaze to him. In the boardroom, Marcus was a shark. Here, in my world, he was an invasive species. "It's not about the girl, Marcus," I said, leaning in so only he and Bella could hear. "It's about the fact that your firm, Sterling Marketing, has been inflating its organic growth metrics for 18 months. I didn't just buy your office building debt. I bought your primary creditor's notes. Your firm isn't disrupting the market, it's drowning in it. The contract with the resort chain wasn't pulled because of me, it was pulled because I showed them your real ledgers. I simply provided the light. You provided the rot." Marcus looked like he was going to vomit. He looked around the room, seeing the eyes of the city's elite, the people he had spent years trying to impress, now looking at him with the cold indifference one shows to a crushed insect. "Bella," Marcus hissed, grabbing her arm, "we're leaving, now." Bella didn't move. She didn't even look at him. She was staring at me, her eyes darting between my face and the emerald-encrusted Viridian seal on the wall behind me. "Silas," Bella whispered, her voice honeyed and low, trying to reclaim the kind persona she had used for 2 years. "We need to talk, privately. This is all just a huge misunderstanding. I was trying to help Marcus with a project. I was doing it for us. I wanted to learn the corporate world so I could help you grow your little business. I didn't know it was already this big." The audacity of the lie was almost beautiful. It was like a parasite trying to find a new vein after the host had died. "The little business is fine, Bella," I said, stepping back. "And as for Marcus, I'd worry more about his private consultation this weekend. I hear the feds are very interested in those offshore marketing tax credits he's been using." I signaled to the security detail, men in crisp suits who had once been my nursery's night watch. "Mr. Sterling and his guest are leaving. Ensure they find their Porsche. I believe the repo men are waiting at the valet." The weeks following the gala were a masterclass in the reality slap. Marcus Sterling didn't just fall, he vanished. His firm went into forced liquidation within 48 hours. The Porsche was gone. The penthouse was seized. The Titan turned out to be a man living on a mountain of credit and lies. And Bella? She found herself in the one place she feared most, the bottom. Without Marcus's connections, her marketing career hit a brick wall. Nobody wanted to hire the woman who was publicly escorted out of the Viridian Gala. She was living in a studio apartment in the very district she used to mock, the smell of industrial exhaust replacing the jasmine she craved. I was at the Viridian estate, my private residence and the heart of my research facility. It was a sprawling conservatory of glass and steel, hidden behind iron gates and ancient oaks. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Thorne, there's a woman at the gate, a Miss Bella Vance. She says it's a life-or-death emergency regarding a botanical patent." I smiled to myself. She was still using the business angle. "Let her in," I said, "but bring her to the north greenhouse, the one with the Titan arum." The Titan arum is a plant that blooms once every few years. It's magnificent, but it has a specific trait. When it blooms, it smells like rotting flesh. It was the perfect atmosphere for our reunion. Bella walked through the doors of the greenhouse, looking a shadow of her former self. The silk blouses were gone, replaced by a fast-fashion blazer that was pilling at the sleeves. Her eyes were red-rimmed and she clutched a designer bag that I knew she was likely going to sell for rent money. "Silas," she said, her voice cracking as she took in the scale of the estate. It was 5 times larger than Marcus's penthouse. "I didn't know where else to go. Everything is falling apart." "It's a greenhouse, Bella," I said, not looking up from a tray of delicate seedlings. "Things fall apart when they aren't cared for. It's called decay." "I made a mistake," she sobbed, finally dropping the act. She fell to her knees on the gravel path, her expensive skirt staining with the very dirt she hated. "I manipulated you," I said, finally setting down my shears. "He mirrored you. You both wanted a life that was polished, but neither of you wanted to do the work to keep the shine. You didn't leave me for Marcus because he was better. You left me because you thought I was less. You wanted the fruit, but you hated the gardener." "I still love you," she cried, reaching for my hand. "Look at this place. We can be the power couple of the city. I can handle your branding. I can make Viridian the biggest name in the world. Just give me one chance to show you I've changed." I let her take my hand. I let her feel the calluses, the scars from the thorns, and the steady, cold pulse of a man who no longer felt anything for her. "Do you smell that, Bella?" I asked, gesturing to the giant bloom behind us. She sniffed, her face wrinkling in disgust. It smells like something died." "It's the Titan arum," I said. "It's one of the rarest plants in the world. People travel across oceans just to see it bloom. But to survive, it attracts the things that love death: flies, beetles, scavengers." I pulled my hand away and wiped it on a cloth. "For 2 years, I was the soil you grew in. I gave you everything: my time, my heart, my support. And the moment you thought you found a richer patch of land, you didn't just leave, you poisoned the ground behind you. You badmouthed me to everyone. You called me a dead end." "Silas, please." "You want a chance to handle my branding?" I laughed, a sharp, dry sound. "Bella, I don't need branding. I own the air the city breathes. I own the buildings. I own the very industry you're trying to crawl back into." I walked toward the glass doors, opening them to the cool evening air. "You told me you deserved a life that was polished. Well, look around. This is what polished looks like when it's built on 20 years of hard work and honesty. But you'll never see the inside of these gates again." "Where am I supposed to go?" she wailed. "I have nothing. Marcus took everything." "Go back to the CEO types, Bella," I said, pausing at the threshold. "Maybe one of them has a hobby you can mock while you wait for their credit cards to decline. But stay out of my garden. The weeds are being cleared today." I signaled the gate. As the heavy iron bars slid shut, I watched her through the glass. She wasn't a queen. She wasn't a visionary. She was just a woman standing in the dirt, finally realizing that the plant boy she had discarded was the only man who had ever truly known how to make her life bloom. I turned back to my seedlings. The silence was beautiful. 6 months after the iron gates of the Viridian estate slammed shut, my life had reached a level of polish that Bella couldn't have imagined in her wildest, greediest dreams. I was no longer the man in the stained pickup truck. I was the keynote speaker at the Global Sustainability Summit. I was on the cover of Forbes, titled The Green Billionaire. Viridian Prime had absorbed 3 major tech firms to create smart cities, urban jungles where every building was a living, breathing lung. I didn't do it for her. I did it because once the dead weight of her constant negativity was gone, I had the energy to breathe. I was no longer spending my nights defending my worth. I was spending them expanding my empire. The reality slap didn't happen in a garden. It happened in the boardroom of Thorn Holdings, the parent company of Viridian. We were hiring a new junior social media manager. It was a low-level position, basically a glorified intern, but because of our prestige, over 5,000 people had applied. My HR director, a sharp woman named Maya, came into my office with a smirk. "Mr. Thorne, you're going to want to see the final candidate for the afternoon block. She's persistent, and she claims to have intimate knowledge of the founder's brand identity." I looked at the screen. There she was, Bella Vance. She looked different. The expensive highlights were gone, replaced by a dull, home-dyed brown. Her power suit was clearly a thrift store find, 2 sizes too big and slightly frayed at the cuffs. But it was her resume that made me chuckle. Previous experience: strategic consultant for the CEO of Sterling Marketing, personal muse and brand developer for Viridian Prime, uncredited. The audacity! She was actually trying to use the 2 years she spent mocking my hobby as a professional qualification to work for me. I told Maya to stay in the room, but to keep me behind the one-way glass of the observation booth. I wanted to hear the audacity in full bloom before I made my entrance. Bella walked into the interview room with a swagger that was entirely unearned. She sat down, crossed her legs, and tossed her hair. She was back in marketing queen mode, or at least a desperate, flickering version of it. "So, Miss Vance," Maya began, her voice professional and cold, "you claim to have helped develop the Viridian brand. Can you explain your process?" Bella leaned forward, her voice dropping into that sugary, kind tone I used to mistake for love. "Oh, it was a labor of passion. The founder, Silas, well, we were very close. Soulmates, really. He had the technical skill, of course, but he was a bit unrefined. A dirt guy, you know. I was the one who whispered the vision of prestige into his ear. I taught him how to present himself. I gave him the confidence to be the man he is today. I watched through the glass, my jaw tightening. She was taking credit for the very growth she had tried to stunt. I see, Maya said, glancing at the observation window. And why did you leave your position at Sterling Marketing? Bella didn't skip a beat. Marcus Sterling was obsessed with me. He was a small-minded man who couldn't handle my ambition. When I realized he was engaging in unethical practices, I blew the whistle and walked away. I chose my integrity over a paycheck. And now I'm here to return to where I belong, at Silas's side. I know he's probably still hurting from our temporary break, and I'm ready to help him lead this company to the next level. I didn't wait for Maya to ask another question. I pushed open the heavy oak door and walked into the room. The silence was instantaneous. Bella froze. Her mouth stayed open, her power persona evaporating like mist in a desert. She stood up, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and a sudden sickening gleam of hope. "Silas!" she chirped, her voice octave shifting into a frantic plea. "I was just telling her about us, about how I've been waiting for the right moment to come back and help you. You look incredible. The suit, the office, it's exactly what I envisioned for you." I didn't sit down. I didn't even acknowledge her outstretched hand. I just looked at her resume on the table. "You told Maya you were my muse, Bella?" I asked, my voice as cold as a mountain stream. "You were, Silas. I pushed you. I made you realize that you couldn't stay a plant boy forever. My insults were just tough love. I knew that if I made you feel small, you'd fight to become big. I did it for you." "Tough love?" I repeated. I pulled out my phone and tapped a button. A recording began to play, the audio from the nursery supply store from 6 months ago. "He's sweet, but he's a dead end. I feel like I'm dating a gardener. I deserve a life that's polished, not one that needs weeding." Bella's face went from red to a ghostly, translucent white. She staggered back, hitting the edge of the table. "I have the ledger, Bella," I said. "I have the texts you sent to Sarah. I have the emails you sent to Marcus mocking the way I smelled when I came home from work. I even have the security footage of you laughing at my hobby while you were standing in the very garden that was paying for your dinner." She started to cry, real, ugly, desperate tears. "I was stupid, Silas. I was young. I didn't know what I had. Please, I'm literally about to be evicting. I haven't eaten a real meal in 3 days. Just give me the junior manager job. I'll do anything. I'll scrub the floors of the greenhouses. Just don't leave me out there." I looked at Maya, then back to the woman who had spent 2 years trying to rot my roots. "You're right, Bella. You should be in a position that reflects your new trajectory. But you aren't a junior manager, and you aren't an apprentice." I leaned in, my face inches from hers. "You're a weed, and in my world, we don't hire weeds, we clear them." I turned to Maya. "The interview is over. Miss Vance is blacklisted from every Thorn Holdings property globally. And Maya, call the department store where she's been borrowing those suits from. I think they'd like their merchandise back." Bella shrieked as security entered the room. "You can't do this! We were in love! You're a monster, Silas! You're just a dirty gardener with a fancy suit!" "Maybe," I said, watching them lead her toward the service elevator, the one used for trash and compost. "But at the end of the day, the gardener is the one who decides what gets to grow, and you, Bella, you're finished." As the doors closed on her screaming, I walked back to my desk. I looked at the small, thriving monstera on my windowsill. It was healthy, it was strong, and most importantly, It was finally in a room where the air was clean. The debt was paid, the garden was silent, and I was finally home.
Thank you for sharing this chapter with us at Velvet Chapters Brew. Comment, like, and subscribe to see where the next page takes us.